I Am Easy to Find is the latest album by Cleveland, Ohio indie rock band The National, a band for the longest time I just dismissed as being another bland, crick darling indie rock band. You know, I only ever really listened to their music kind of passively for the longest time, but earlier this year I went on a big binge throughout all the discography and I ended up turning out to be a huge fan of the band. I actually think they're really, really good. Sleep Well Beast is my favorite of theirs, but they've got plenty of great albums. High Violet, Boxer, Alligator, dude, just they're really worth your time. They're great. Just give them. Just you gotta be patient with it. You know, they don't make the most commanding music in the world, so you just kind of gotta let it just wash over you, just sink into it. You know, and it just really ended up clicking for me earlier this year. Well, they did as a band, and here they have a new one. It's called I Am Easy to Find, and the last project, Sleep Well Beast, is, in my opinion, probably their most despondent and kind of dejected one. The album sort of sounds like you're just separated from everyone in a cabin similar to the one shown on the cover, and you're just kind of reflecting on all of your life choices in this one sort of just barren location. Like that's the atmosphere or the image I get when I hear that thing, and I think it's their best work, and I was really curious to see how they would follow it up with this new one. And whilst this isn't quite as despondent as that project, the kind of quiet, slow, vulnerable, and intimate, you know, sound that the National are known to bring does show up on this new one as well. But this one has a bit of a tone of endearment. There is an ongoing theme of dissipated love over a long period of time that I've caught on the lyrics of this thing. I think the general message of this album with the title, I Am Easy to Find, given that relationships and marriage are sort of like the center theme of this project, I think the title, I Am Easy to Find, is referencing basically if it ever seems like the love is sort of dying, have faith that like it can be found again, sort of like be restored. It's kind of what I think it means. I think this album discusses a topic like love in a pretty beautiful and crushingly real way, how it has the ability to kind of change who you are and sort of redefine who you thought you were in the past. Oblivions in particular, this track seems to be about like what it means to follow through with marriage and how much of a commitment that is. There are lines on this track referencing kind of like the fear that one day your partner won't be there to pick you up like they used to. And I like how quite often on this album you'll get a male and female voice singing at the same time. That kind of happens pretty frequently. I think that's to sort of exemplify how both parties are often worrying the same thing, and how like the concerns you have are often reciprocated by the partner. I like how on the song I Am Easy to Find, the title track, this is sort of like the one track where everything feels kind of as it should be, kind of whole. Like I like that line about, you know, there's a million little battles I'm never going to win, I'll still be waiting with ticker tape, sort of saying like no matter how many potholes we fall in, how many arguments we have, I'll still be celebrating your arrival. And that kind of like vocal humming at the end, so comforting. It kind of feels like everything has been restored. The drums that come and really hit that point home too pretty nicely. So I think this album is ultimately just about how love can sort of progress over time. I've not seen the short film that is attached to this album. I might have to go and watch that and see if that uncovers anything I missed about the writing on this thing, but I found it really gorgeous. I also think there are some moments where it kind of sounds like Matt is losing hope a little bit, like on Not in Kansas, which that song reads to me as kind of like the sort of spiraling state your mind is in when you're just like overthinking everything or like infatuated with someone. There are moments where he sort of says kind of goofy things like, oh, the first Testament was great, the sequel was incredible, just like The Godfathers or the first two Strokes albums. And that kind of reads to me, that part kind of made me laugh, but it also kind of reads to me as him sort of like trying to sort of find light in a really when he's in a state where you can't avoid something that's really clouding his head. He's sort of like clinging on to like these little things that make him giggle, like holding the New Testament, the sequel and shit. But the tone of his voice is super defeated on this track, and the way he's writing kind of reminds me a bit of something Mark Kozlik would do or some shit. But ultimately that song is actually one of the most moving too. The choir vocal sequences are also really nicely contrasted with his verses. There was another song too in the second half that kind of read to me as a bit hopeless. I think it was Hairpin Turns, where he's talking about how all of his disputes with his partner kind of revolve around the same thing. He's worried that it's getting tedious, and he's unsure if like if they're both happy or anything like that. And I think the music, the songs here really nicely elevate the power of these themes. Like I did notice that this whole thing, there was quite an abundance of these like really distant sort of low octave piano chords that really effectively enforce the kind of crushing reality of what's being said on this album. I loved the instrumental and the structure of the song So Far So Fast, how like in the second half, the final 2 minutes is just nothing but instrumental, but like there's not really a consistent sort of like steady groove that it establishes or anything. It just sounds more like the anxious rush of joy you get when you sort of finally connect with someone you really love and you like realize that you want to stay with them. It's a really uplifting and beautiful moment instrumentally, and I love how life-affirming and majestic the guitar notes in the climax of the song Rylan are. Another really beautiful track there. My issues with this album, I think the vocals at the beginning of the song Dust Swirls in Strange Light are a bit off-putting. They kind of sound weirdly inhuman to me. They kind of like da, 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 da. And the way Dust Swirls segues from those vocals into the instrumental feels very awkward to me as well. That track's probably my least favorite. I also didn't really think too much of the opening track. I think that song seems to kind of set the template for the arc and pace of every song on this album. They're all structured really similarly. I did notice how quite often you'll get a song that starts off kind of vulnerably and then ends off with some more expansive instrumental climax or something, which is first displayed on this opening track, but I'm just not really into the kind of stuttering, panning guitar thing, the electric guitar, that kind of like the kind of jittery guitar on the instrumental. I find that a bit annoying personally. Ultimately, I really love this album. I think it's actually fucking awesome. It is quite slow, it's quite patient. It will require you to kind of sit with it and let it sort of wash over you, like I was saying before. But if you give it the time, there's a good chance this thing will really click and become something quite beautiful. So I'm feeling an 8 out of 10. This is a big favorite of mine this year. I also quite like the two interludes as well, Underwater and Her Father in the... I think those are both quite nice. But yeah, ultimately, I love this. I think it's awesome. Recommend it. Thank you for watching my review. I will see you on the next review. Bye!